Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I thought we could do some doll refacings. A lot of you asked for that in the comments, and I thought what would be better for October than taking these super cute Monster High dolls and turning them genuinely monstrous and super scary. So let's get started. So now that I've wrestled them out of their cardboard boxes, I'm going to get rid of all the cute little accessories they come with because we're starting from scratch. I'll hold on to the accessories just in case I want to use them later, but for the painting process we need everything off. Now there's been some pretty major changes to Monster High dolls since I last bought one. Here is the previous Draculaura, and you can see that there's some really severe changes made in both the molding, the paint job, and the way that they're designed. So previous Monster High dolls were very posable, they had lots of joints, and the current Draculaura has basically no joints. She even has some of her fingers fused together, and worst of all, they have a permanent bathing suit painted on. So we're going to remove the faces with some nail polish remover, some of these little scrubby pads, and about a million Q-tips. Hardcore doll makers use pure acetone to take the paint off, and it works a lot better because nail polish remover has more water and stuff in it. But since I just do this very occasionally for a hobby, I'll just use regular nail polish remover. I take both of their faces off as carefully as I can and try to make sure to change out the Q-tips a lot because otherwise you can start to just push the paint around. So you want to be careful not to do that. Otherwise you can have some grayish smudges all over their face and it can get really stuck there and hard to get off. I use a regular hair tie and some masking tape to keep their hair out of the way while I work on their faces. Masking tape is good because it's not too sticky. After a couple quick sprays of some Citadel Purity Seal, we are ready to put their faces back on. So I'm primarily going to be using these Derwent watercolor pencils. I like them because when they're dry you can build up color very slowly and they can be very soft looking. And then if you get them wet you can get a much stronger, more opaque color, so they kind of have that dual usage. So right now I'm trying to just bring some color back into her face and show off more of the sculpting underneath. I find it really interesting that it seems like with these Monster High dolls, they have a very nice and subtle sculpt underneath the face, and then when they put the face paint on, it's sort of just stickered on without any consideration of how the lips were actually sculpted or the eyes were actually sculpted. The face looks really different when you take the paint off. Before I go too crazy on the eyes, I want to make sure that I have the whites of the eyes in, so taking a small brush and some white acrylic, I'm just painting in the whites of her eyes. And then as soon as that is dry, I am taking a black watercolor pencil and I'm just cleaning up the edges because I got a little bit messy there. My concept for this scary Draculaura is just to make her more of a traditional vampire. I want more bloody red colors, I want her to have much darker eye, and just generally to look a lot more nefarious. That's why I gave her such dramatically arched eyebrows as well. I feel like that'll really, first of all, make use of that giant forehead that she has, and also it will make her look a little more ominous. I want her lips to look more real than they did in the original paint job, where it was just sort of this one flat color stickered over her mouth, so I'm slowly trying to bring in a gradient of a darker red color that moves along the crease of her lips and just generally looks a little more alive and skin-like. Then I'm bringing a bit more undead into it by bringing in some black. I want to make sure that she doesn't look too cute. Next up, I gotta start working on her eyes, so I do the first layer of some red irises, adding in a black limbal ring. I want to make sure that her eyes have a lot of contrast and really pop out from her face. For Draculaura, I knew I wanted her to look ominous and creepy, so I'm mostly trying to elongate her features. I'm making her mouth look freakishly larger than it was before by just darkening up those corners. She actually has quite a wide mouth sculpted in, and if you contour out the corners, it makes it look like she has quite a wide smile. And I'm just trying to build up the opacity in various places to make sure that her whole paint job looks really crisp and clear. That can be very difficult when you're working with watercolor pencils, so it's something I'm trying to focus on. I also gave her a bit of a tear track down her face so she'd look more crazy and spooky, and I'm using some acrylic white on her eyes to make them look a little glossier. And I'm just trying to burnish up her face a little bit so that it has more three-dimensional quality. Now that her face is done, it's time to peel off that masking tape. Let's hope that it didn't get too stuck to her hair. It came off pretty okay. I think I pulled out 1 or 2 hairs, but other than that, she was fine. Now, I'm not quite finished with her yet, but I'm going to move on to Frankie Stein's face up before I work on any clothes for either of them. So for her, I'm going to start with the white acrylic paint and see how that treats me. I want to make sure that her eyes are wider and distinctly different from Draculaura. I want to make sure that they don't look the same when I'm done with them. And I want Frankie to look more like someone who's been experimented on in some creepy lab rather than a villain herself. So I'm going for sort of a medical horror kind of thing with her. While I'm letting that acrylic white dry, I'm going to slowly start to build up some bluish color on her lips. I want her to look unhealthy and creepy. And I'm also putting in some of this orangey red color into her nostrils so that I can brush that off and she can have a sort of nicely burnished nose so she looks more alive. Much like with Draculaura, it's a mix between trying to make her look more real and more alive as well as trying to make her look more monstrous and dead, and I'm trying to find that balance. I'm going to build up a lot of red around her eyes so that she looks more vulnerable and like she's been through something because that's sort of the concept with her. And I'm going to start using this paintbrush with some water on it to just burnish that out and make it a little softer around the edges. It's pretty sloppy right now, but I'm going to clean it up later, so it's okay that it's a bit of a mess right now. Next up, I'm giving her the opposite eyebrows to what Draculaura had, so they're extremely tipped up and they're not so long. I just basically want her to look sympathetic and worried. I'm trying to make sure that her eyebrows look a bit more natural than Draculaura's as well, and trying to have more of like individual hairs showing in her eyebrows so that it looks less like she's been sculpting them in the mirror and more like these are just how they naturally grow. Next up, I'm going to start tracing in a orange color the areas where I want her to have stitches. So I'm going to build this up slowly so it looks depthy and kind of more wound-like. Her previous little painted on stitches were really silly looking, I think, before, and it didn't really make any sense for a Frankenstein type character. So I'm going to try to make them look more connected. I'm also giving her yellow eyes because I feel like those will really pop, and I'm going to leave them without a pupil so that she looks more haunted and sort of like she's looking out into the distance. I generally just want her to look very sad, and I'm also going to blot off most of the black I put on her lips because I just want it to be sort of a grayish cast. Again, I'm trying to make her look relatively unhealthy and like she is this strange experiment. I'm going to go back into the stitch cuts on her face with a darker red and start to make them a little bit messier so that it looks a little bit like inflammation or like an area that's actually been injured. So I'm not just following the lines, but I'm also trying to sort of decide where the black stitches will end up going. I basically really want to make sure that this is dark enough on her face while still looking like it's part of her skin and not something that's just been painted on. And last but not least, I'm putting on the black stitches as carefully as I can, and I'm trying to make them look relatively hackneyed and crazy because she is like a mad scientist's experiment, so I don't want them to look super medical grade. I also gave her a little black track down the side of her mouth just to look extra gross, and I'm going to go into the stitches that are on her neck. Those are actually molded in, and just give that a bit more of a wound-like appearance. I'm also going to give her some shines on her eyes so she looks at least a little bit alive, though I did put too much water in the acrylic and I almost ended up smudging her eyes quite badly, so I'd say be careful if you try to do that. And then with that, she's really getting finished up. The last thing I wanted to do was give her some cold looking freckles and darken down the shadows underneath her eye a bit more so she's even more sympathetic. Honestly, I really like the way her face turned out. I think she looks very sad and sweet, and I'm gonna really enjoy having her on my shelf. So now I just gotta take off this big hair covering that I gave her. I decided to cover their hair with a paper towel as well so that when I put on the purity seal, it wouldn't gunk up their hair. I gotta say that the Monster High hair they gave her is actually really pretty. It's like this metallic-y lilac color. So here the girls are all finished up with their faces, but now they need clothes. So I went to the dollar store and I just picked up 2 shirts, one in red and one in black, and I'm going to try to make them some clothes as best as I can. I've literally never made custom doll clothes before, so this went interestingly. Even though I do know how to hand stitch clothes, I decided to go for my trusty pink hot glue gun, a choice that I would regret very soon in the future. So I decided to hot glue this slinky red dress for Draculaura, as well as a little circle skirt in black for Frankie. And I wanted to make her a little top to go with it. This is the part where I burn myself horribly. So first you're gonna see me knock my knuckles against that hot part at the top. That's why I flinched away. And then because I'm really tired apparently when I was filming this last part, I do it again right here. And yeah, I have a mark from that. That was actually really painful. Next up, I'm taking this lace, I'm cutting off a piece of it so that it looks more doll sized and not so friggin' huge. And I'm making her these cute little lacy straps for her dress. I really like how she turned out. I think that her dress is really cute, and I was going for a little like medical sort of Lolita-ish outfit for her. And while I mostly like her paint job, I do think Draculaura is a little bit sloppier looking. I do like the outfit I was able to make for her with this red dress and bat cape. And at least from a normal distance, I think they actually turned out pretty cute. Let me know how you think I did and which one is your favorite in the comments, and I will see you guys next video. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Bambo, Cal Pompon, Cat Pupchino, Dr. Casket, Dustin Williams, Elizabeth Alvin, Hanuki, Hope Chilsum, JJ Jade, Blep, Blah 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 Blah, Matthew Kunke, Micah Dactyl, Okamore, Ollie, Rachel Singh, Rosie Warlock, Sergeant Pendulum, The Artsy Moose, Your Boy ST, Zixith, and Zoe Stardust.